Everybody, Philip's here so we can start. I'm calling this meeting to order, and Jenny, would you call the roll, please?
Pat Bradford,
I am here.
Josie Barnhart. Here. Pete Wildebohr.
Present.
Kimberly Clark.
Here.
Jana Lena.
Here.
Hannah Moon.
Here.
Philip Sutton. Charlene Thompson. Jared Worthington.
Here.
Stephanie Walker.
Here.
Rod Zappel. Eric Cradle.
Here.
Amanda Kuziak.
Here.
Lisa Wurzbacher. Natalie English.
Here.
John Hennett. Christopher Riley.
All right, we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance with Mr. Wildebohr, and Pastor Beverly Kinlaw has an invocation that she called in. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Greetings, this is Reverend Beverly Kinlaw, and I'd like to pray today for you for your meeting at 12:30. So if you will join with me, and let me lift this up to the Heavenly Father. Father God, we come to you asking for your blessing and help as we are gathered together today. Father, we pray for guidance in the matters at hand and ask that you would clearly show us how to map out a plan for the financial course of the school district. And Lord, we thank you, God, that we know that you know how to accomplish this financial course. And Lord, impart to us wisdom, impart to us favor, God, for as we present these different options, that they will be received. And Lord, we just give you honor and glory, for you truly are a great God that answers prayer. We thank you, God, for accomplishing it. We thank you, God, for peace over this meeting. In the mighty name of Jesus, amen.
Next item is approval of the agenda. Any voting member want to?
So moved.
All right, we have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And the same thing with the minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes?
All right, we have the first and the second to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're going straight into the meat. We have current capital projects to consider for a building program. The board has not determined a priority yet. The county will determine the best way to fund the building program, but it will be this body that makes the recommendation, so no pressure there. Rob Morgan is our new Assistant Superintendent for Operations and Planning. He's right down here. Take it away, Rob.
All right, good afternoon, thank you. So the handout that you have showing the current capital projects, I think what we wanted to really point out to everyone is the number of projects you'll see on the far right column that we've got completion dates for. Majority of them have been completed and or have completion dates in the months ahead. The other thing that I think is important to point out are the encumbrance amounts. If you'll notice on the last page, we have a total of, let's see, page 6, we have a total of $9.563 million in encumbered funds. Roughly 73% of that is encumbered to New Hanover High School and the projects going on there that we expect to be completed. As of right now, they are on schedule, Mr. Sutton, and we're hoping to see them done, closed out hopefully by September 1st. So I think it's important to point out the fact that that is accounting for the majority of our currently encumbered funds.
Rob, can I ask you a minute? For clarity, was it 73 or 76% is encumbered? for New Hanover?
Roughly 73%.
Thank you.
Rob, is there a way we can get a figure minus the Hanover stuff?
Yes, we can. I mean, I can certainly do it right now, but I can also get you that in print.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
may I ask a question?
sure.
I heard a deadline of September 1st was the completion date for the New Hanover project, and my understanding was that we were going to be ready to go for the next school year.
No, I'm sorry. I referenced the closeout date, so
Oh, the
we
closeout.
expect to be
Thank you.
done before school starts, but I don't know that all of those bills will be paid
Okay.
before the first day of school.
Thank you for that clarity. I was under the impression that we were going to be done before school started, so I heard that date and I wanted to
That's
clarify
fair.
that.
Yeah, so to clarify, closeout means all bills paid.
Correct.
Okay. And that matters because of where the fiscal year ends, and so it matters with this question of why is there money sitting in this account?
Yes.
When you haven't spent it, when it's actually there, that the bill might just not have been paid yet.
Correct.
Thank you.
So for the purposes of this conversation, it matters specifically to encumbered funds.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
my apologies for coming in
Good
a few
afternoon,
minutes
Mr.
late.
Zappel,
Good
Commissioner
afternoon.
Zappel.
Mr. Morgan,
Yes, sir.
thank you for this breakdown, very helpful. It's been a part of the conversation that's been happening throughout the community as to why that money, the $13 million has been there. If I heard you correctly, you identified where at least $9 million of it, or $9.5 million of it is going to go, that's encumbered at this point. Will all of the work be done by September 1st?
It's expected to be, yes, sir. Now, that's specific to New Hanover High School.
Yeah.
So we have other projects in there that you'll see with estimated completion dates that are further out. Like, for example, I see some that are, their completion dates are end of August, into October, end of October. So I just wanted to point out specifically what I was talking about because of how much of the large percentage of encumbered funds that are related to New Hanover, I wanted to point out those dates and that figure. And Ms. Walker, to answer your question, minus New Hanover, it is 2 million. Sorry? Okay. Thank you. 2.7.
That's just important, and that's why I was wanting to know the difference. Because, I mean, they all get together, and, you know, the needs are far greater, but if these are encumbered funds, I mean, we need to know that.
Hey, Rob?
Yes.
Would it be okay if you went through this, and maybe it was what you were going to do, but if you talked about the project on the left and went all the way over to estimated completion date, and the ones that are complete or have a date, could we just note them and go down together? So I think that's a big problem out there in the community for those funds sitting there, and understanding where the fiscal year ends, where the school year ends, where the kids are not in the building so you can actually make the repair, and then the time it takes to get closed out where all the bills are paid.
Okay.
And Rob, before you start, can I make a comment? I just want to share on this sheet, that last column, estimated completion date. That date is actually the completion date of the project. That is not the closeout date of when we expect all the invoices to be paid. So there will be a lag of, you know, the expenses being paid versus when we think the project will actually be completed. So I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware.
Ashley, typically how long is that?
It depends on, because we go out and inspect and make sure the work is good, so it depends. But if we go out, everything looks good, a month or two is the estimate I would use. Leanne, would you agree a month or two is usually on track with getting it invoices paid? Yeah.
Madam Chair, if I may, Leanne, first off, it's great to see you. Thank you. My concern was, when does the money move out of the account? And so, if I'm hearing you right, months after the completion date that's written on this chart. Is that right?
All along the way, in the process of construction, once a month, we're getting billed by the contractor through a payout, a process you're very familiar with, Mr. Zappel. So as we get into the months of June and July, we get the bulk of our pay apps from our contractors and into August as well. So our projects don't marry up with the fiscal year very well at all, because most of the work has to occur over the summer. So when we get into August, if we've completed the bulk of the work, we'll also be billed for the bulk of that construction work. And what we've noted in the document that Mr. Morgan presented is just taking it out worst case scenario to where those would be zeroed out line items. And it does involve that process that we call closeout. So we've anticipated a couple of months, a month or two out from the date that we believe we will be substantially complete. In other words, we can occupy the space. Within a month or two, we will have received all of our closeout documentation, and we would be able to finance the final payout. That's a long-winded answer, but I hope it filled in some gaps.
Very good answer.
And Commissioner Zappel, I would just point out something I have observed over the years. It takes a while for the government to pay you, even the school district. It's a slow channel of mysterious things before the check arrives.
I agree, but
I
you'll
don't know how
always
the
know
county-
that the money will be there from the county, as it always has been and always will be. Amen.
Can I just add too, I think that's where the confusion, and thank you very much for that explanation, because I think the confusion is the timeline on things and how budgets roll. And so I'm looking at this list of capital projects. Is it like, do we go, okay, these are the ones we want to do this fiscal year, right? They're the ones at the top of the priority list, right? Is that how this usually works with this list?
So this list is a list of our current projects. So
Okay.
funding has already been identified for these projects. We're already working and planning on these projects.
So that was a good point. Funding has already been identified for these projects. So these are the ones you want to, I assume they're at the top of the list of importance, right? And that's how you deal with how you're going to do it for every year.
Right.
And so when you do these lists, you say, okay, we're going to need, I'll just throw 12 million out there. And that's the request, right, in the budget. I'm not sure if you have a follow-up question to that, Rob, because I know at our last budget meeting, we had a long discussion about this and how, I think maybe there's a lack of, I don't know, communication between us on how that process is working for the schools and how the money should flow, and if there's a real plan. Because I feel like there is, and I referenced the binder, like, I think twice at that last meeting that Eddie would have, when it had the list of priorities, and I'm assuming that's what you guys decide every year is most important to be funded, and then you submit that. So I just want to
Right.
talk it out
Sure.
in public with everyone.
Yep, so we actually have a meeting where each department, so it's not just, we talk a lot about facilities planning, but it's also technology has projects. We have furniture and equipment projects that come from our purchasing area. And of course, maintenance has projects as well that are discussed. And so everyone brings all of their priorities. And even within those priorities that they bring, there are priorities 1, 2, 3. So what's the top priority on this list and what is maybe the lowest priority on the list? And then that information is shared with the finance, or well, the capital, it used to be capital committee, but now that committee has rolled into this committee. And we have conversations about those things, and then a determination from, which now will be this committee, a recommendation would go to our board, and then the board would determine what the request to the county would be. This year, the requests to the county were only the highest priorities from each of those areas I just mentioned.
And may-
Go
May I
ahead.
ask a clarifying, because I think where I hear the concern at most from our commissioners, not just the ones at this table, is this, a bulk of these funding came from really 2 years ago cycle ask, and it was encumbered, and then once the bidding process happened and going through and actually completing them, some are still not fully completed from 2 years ago. Now granted, you guys have been very generous with New Hanover to be able to be responsive to that needs of close to $7 million this year, even though it wasn't budgeted for that. You're right in saying, when asked and you shall receive, amen. So we are going to continue to do that. But I think where I hear the question often is the priority ask that we have for this year. Do we know in that priority one, if we receive whatever money we receive, we're obviously going to work as far down the list of priority ones that we can. Are those projects able to be completed in a 1-year cycle, or is it going to look longer, like this potentially 2-year cycle that some of these projects have taken to occur? That's where I hear feedback on my end. And is that where you were getting to, Commissioner?
Yeah, I think to kind of compress it, an excellent explanation, if we had a capital improvement plan, a CIP, that 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, which like any plan can be adjusted when we have a New Hanover issue or a Pine Valley issue or whatever. But what happens is what we're seeing right here is that the priority all of a sudden pops up, and usually about a month before we have to put a budget together. So if we had that forward-looking future plan, we could all sit down, and usually a CIP has a timeline that would show, Ms. Barnhart, when the project would start and when it would come to conclusion. Then, Eric and Amanda, life would be a joy, because they would be able to kind of look out and see what's coming, again, with knowing that there will be emergencies or urgent situations that pop up. So going forward, a CIP would be a wonderful tool to help the communication.
I believe it's essential, actually.
Well-
It's essential because I just think there's something missing in the communication part. The needs are obviously there. I mean, I've seen the list. I've seen the binder. And to that point about capital needs, like in our own county, like you're going to need building maintenance, you're going to need roofs, you're going to need HVAC, you're going to need things that are going to regularly need fixing. And I don't know, I'm not going to speak to each list. I haven't read every single thing on here, but I mean, I think to that point, at least lets people know ahead of time. I think maybe some heartburn was when I heard, and this is just me hearing, we're going to need $19 million this year. Like, it just kind of popped out, and I think people were like, wow. The needs probably were already there, obviously, but I just think coming out like that, it's a little bit of a shocker, perhaps, to folks that are trying to put together a budget, right? Having a plan will be essential, and I hope that we can do that. I think we can do that. I mean, I've seen the binder. I know that it exists, and I know that we could probably come up with, this is what we're going to need in the next 1, 3, and 5, which I guess is standard, right? Is that the industry standard for capital improvement?
Well, and if I may comment to that, we have a 2-year look ahead. That is, we don't label it a capital improvement plan, but that's exactly what it is. So every year, and we have a running list. It's probably the binder that you're referring to. Eddie liked everything in paper. I have it electronically. So we receive requests every year from all of our campuses, and let me take it from a facilities and maintenance point of view for just a moment, because like Ashley mentioned, there are many other departments who make requests, but from the standpoint of facilities and maintenance, we have an ongoing list of all the needs, and every year we add to it. Some we take off because we were able to accomplish those projects, but we add to it every year, and then we prioritize those, as Ashley referenced, for priorities 1, 2, and 3 based on need, and then we've used that to map out for the next 2 years what work we need to have occur within the district. So we do have that. It's maybe not as formal of a document, and we could certainly formalize it and make it more readily understandable to someone who's outside the district, but we definitely do look ahead. And I wanted to note, Ms. Barnhart, may I note that your question about implementation. From a facility standpoint, everything that we have requested, the list that we gave Ashley and Dr. Barnes, facilities would intend to implement that between now and next year. It wouldn't be a 2-year process. The things that we note are such urgent needs that come July, with the approval of the budget, we would roll right into getting the projects into the design phase, and in the fall, completing the design, bidding in late fall, early winter, prepping for work to begin in the summer. So our intent is to move on these projects, and from a facility standpoint, we don't hold these funds.
I'd also like to add too, I think, to several of those points. A lot of the lists that we maintain, they get carried over year after year after year because of things that come up that were unexpected. The best example I can think of in my own personal experience is when I was the principal at New Hanover High School, I initiated the conversation about a culinary arts lab. Mr. Sutton still doesn't have that. I take full blame for that, by the way. But other things have surfaced in the interim that have prevented that from becoming something that is completed, started and completed. And so I do think it's important to highlight that I'm like you, I know the list. I don't know the binder, but I know the list. Because as a building level administrator, my list was often the same year after year, only bigger. And then at some point I have to come through and I have to mark things off that are no longer a priority for it. And so I think that is also part of the reason we may not have something as formalized like you're discussing about with a timeline and specific costs, because I feel like we're often working with a moving target. And the more we can nail that down, the better.
May I ask a couple of clarifying questions? And I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Leanne.
Lawrence.
Nice to meet you. I'm Natalie English. So I heard you talking about that process and said, you spend right away, and yet some of those you probably can't start until the summer. So that does roll into 2 years, I'm assuming. So I don't know that answer works every time. That's a clarifying question.
Well, that's an excellent point. It depends on your definition of the year.
Right.
And
Right.
I think that potentially could be a fundamental miscommunication.
I agree.
Where we're speaking in different languages. So in the world of facility planning and construction, we look at it start of school to start of school.
Right.
That really becomes
Gotcha.
my year.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so
Which rolls across 2 fiscal years.
it does.
That's a clarifying point. I think the commissioners probably have not understood as well as we need them to. I have another question. When I look at the bottom, there are $3 million in available budget. Is that available budget that is already planned to be spent, or is it money that's been saved because y'all are so awesome? Which you are, but
I think in some cases, it's simply a matter of money that has been budgeted but has not been encumbered.
okay, got it. But still needed for those projects.
Yes.
Okay, so
Until we find out it's not, and then
right.
it's placed somewhere else.
Right. So I would, as an add-on to what Member Barnhart said, it's not only that 19, or did you say it? Anyway, somebody said, it's not only that $19 million need, it's also that 6 months or so ago, suddenly we were saying we needed a school bond. And people all over the community were asking, why do we need that if there's money? So I think we have to continue, Dr. Barnes, communicating a lot more transparently with the commissioners and with the public so they don't have misinformation and we can get everything we need for our schools.
Okay.
Yeah,
Dr. Barnes, you want to go next? You want?
I do. You okay, Joe's going to jump in real quick
Yeah.
to respond to that? I want to be clear that this is what transparency looks like, okay? I promise you that we are not putting things on this list that we don't need. And I know that I can't speak to what happened before in the past or anything like that, but when I look 5 years down the line, you have to backwards map to where we are now. The facility needs that we have, there is a lot of repair to the current facilities we have, and there are new facilities that we need to bring this county where it needs to go for the next 100 years of education. So while I know that there's a different answer between we can't afford all these things at one time, and we all know that we can. That's where the collaboration part comes in. But it would be disingenuous for me to not say that this is what our kids need, because this is what our kids need. Now, what we can afford and what we can manage is a different answer. But it wouldn't be transparent for me not to bring you the things that are genuinely needed. I will also tell you that this transparency has a double-edged sword to it, right? Because it does put us all in a situation where now we have to respond to why aren't you doing everything the school needs? The school knows that the school can't get everything the school needs. We get that. But we have to put it out there that these things are still there. I have kids tripping over ripped carpeting. I have kids who can't learn because the environment in the building isn't conducive because the HVAC system goes down. These are real things that are happening. So I think the conversation is how do we afford what we need, but I don't think the question is do we need it or not.
Agree. When I say transparency, I totally agree. And while I haven't sat at this table in New Hanover County before, I'm talking even beyond the table, the Board of Education and the Board of Commissioners. We've got to figure out how we help the general public understand this as well.
Correct. Yeah, I agree.
Ms.
Thank you.
Barnhart.
Thank you. Myself and
Excuse me,
Mr.
Vice Chair
Wildeboer had served on the Capital Committee for the last couple of years. And so what our task was in that committee was to bring forth the recommendation for the board to then in turn bring to the county commissioners. So we do have a laundry list, and if I remember correctly, and Dr. Morgan could probably speak to this, $550 million, if we were able to complete everything that we needed to do to our facilities, is where the list is. But the realistic expectation of us serving on that committee was, what are we going to bring forth to the board? And so coming up with the top priorities to say, let's be most responsive to where we're at. The other thing that I want to add is one of the things of that committee that we were really diligent at is to make sure we're on a warranty schedule, is like I like to say. And so I'm just going to put this out there. I put out there a couple of times. It's roughly $500,000, and just to make sure that we have an assessment of our school system so we know when the roof repair and the HVAC system and the telecoms and everything that needs to be under warranty, so that we have a routine maintenance schedule rather than a responsive to this is happening right now, we have to fix it. And so we are moving in that direction in addition to being responsive to the needs of proactively planning, so it doesn't come up as a, oh, now this, oh, now that. So I want to point that out as two things, but we do have that laundry list. I don't think it's as, like, from what I remember, Dr. Morgan, I don't think it's as in detail as far as when it's at bid to when we can complete it to the closeout date, which I think would be beneficial, but we do have the laundry list of the multi-year plan.
And I think, to your point, we do have, and in the budget requested for
We
capital,
do.
we do have that
$500,000.
assessment.
Yes,
that
that's
you
what
talked about.
I'm putting it out.
We all know that number.
Yeah, and I think that will help us move in that direction of putting some timelines on things. To be frank, I think that assessment is necessary for us to get
Yes,
a
sir.
complete picture.
Agreed. And I think one of the points that has been made over and over, but I'm not sure that anybody outside this room even grasps it, is the difference between the school year and the calendar year.
Yeah.
And there's no way, if something takes a year, it's not going to roll through two fiscal funding years. It's just not. It's impractical to think that. And I think sometimes that the money that's left in that account that annoys you, because got money in there, it is encumbered, but we've got to get through the school summer to finish those things, and then it's slow to pay, and you've rolled into another fiscal year. So it's still sitting there, but it's spent.
Madam Chair, again, there's a pretty basic tool that's used in construction and development. And I mentioned it before, a flow chart. That absolutely, the issue you're bringing up of spanning 2 years or even 3 years is something that developers and builders, contractors deal with all the time.
Okay.
So developing and there's oodles of examples you can pull down off the internet or talk to. You can easily find a flow chart that's set up for construction that would work. That one simple adjustment would then give us all, and I mean everybody at this table, eyes and ears on this, so when we have this conversation, we realize this is going to span 2 fiscal years and sometimes 3. In the case of New Hanover High School, the ultimate fixes are going to be multi-year like that, but at least we have some kind of idea of the dollars. And I know there's a hesitancy to throw out a number like the $550 million there. It's like, oh, cripes, we don't want to put that out in the public because it's going to raise too many alarms. That's where you go to a 10-year CIP. It's a 10-year planning document is all that is. So that, but at least alerts us so we don't have a mental breakdown when we hear $550 million because we tend to relate it to what do we have available to us now.
Right.
No, it's over a 10-year period. And we can begin to plan on how to create the funding for that. Rob, I know you want to say something really bad.
Well,
Go ahead.
I hear everything you're saying, and I
Yeah.
agree. I think the only thing I wanted to mention too is, I believe we follow those flow charts. Those become drafted once we have a project that we know we're funding. I think it's difficult to have that in place if we don't know for sure we're funding a project, because other things, again, become the priority. And so, if we're going to put time, money, and effort into a project, and we're going to create that timeline, I think we are in a better position to know what those dates look like and to follow that flow chart. But I think if we're not sure we're going to be able to fund a project, say, next February, we're not to the point of putting those resources into that yet.
Right,
And
yeah.
so it becomes, it does become sort of a checklist that I think, to your point, of if we have a 10-year CIP in place, we can become more specific with it once we get closer to starting them.
Yes to all of that. You can see
Okay.
how, let me just add to it. You can see now we're getting to the root of when I look at the request of $18.9 million, which the school board has brought forward in their capital. That's the $19 million we kick around. And we drop it into the encumbered and non-encumbered $13 million that's there now. To me, what it says, so now you've got an account with $32 million in it, but I have no idea how and when it's going to be spent, and here's the critical part, do you have the capacity to spend it within the next year? And that huge question mark there is what drives the conversation that's happening throughout the community and that we are having at the county, and I hope that you're having here. Do you have the capacity? And I don't know. $32 million is a lot of money to keep off the streets. I know it's planned to go on the streets, I'm just talking in jargon there, but to put it into facilities. But that may, it may take you 3 years or 4 years to spend that $32 million down. And if that's the case, then let's spread it out.
Dr. Barnes?
And that's well taken. When we met with Mr. Coudray the other week, one of the things we spoke about was, that's totally fine. I don't need all my allowance at the same time. As long as commissioners, you're okay with, as we complete projects, to come back and petition for more funds to do that. But that's hard for you guys to manage in a budget as well. So we're just trying to make it a little cleaner. We're perfectly fine to say we're going to do it in $3 million, $5 million installments, whatever you guys think is fine, as long as the door is open and come back and say, we fixed that $5 million, we're ready for our next installment. Was that sort of what we talked about, Ashley and Rob? So we're perfectly fine. We're trying to be as flexible as possible. And we know that there's sticker shock to seeing all this at once. But this is a part of how you start the conversation.
If I might, real quick, I mean, I hear this. I think we've kind of got to the crux of the issue. It's a money flow issue. It's a budget cycle that runs yearly, right? It's thinking about money sitting there that has not been spent, but it's also the needs are there and it needs to be encumbered and spent. I think, to Dr. Barnes's point, we should probably maybe, if we have the plan like we hope we have soon and we can talk about doing, that the flow of it is, okay, now it's time to do this repair, now it's time for that money to be spent. I think that might make it a little easier. I don't know what that looks like Whether it becomes a budget amendment, maybe Eric or Amanda can speak to that, I don't know. But I think we're talking about a money flow issue here, and money just sitting somewhere waiting for it to be spent. I don't think there's gonna ever a question of it being asked for and being given. I just think, when you're trying to do a budget every year and you hear like 19 million, it's a shocking thing to hear, even though we know the needs are there. So if we can work that out, I would love to see that happen. I don't want to speak for all the commission, obviously, I'm here speaking for myself, but I've heard, I've been on both sides of this kind of discussion. I know the great needs are there, and I'm hoping that we figure out a way for the money to just flow a little bit better and get, repairs get done what needs to be done. I mean, I hate to put y'all on the spot for the finance people, but I know that you've got some really good ideas for that. And I don't know how we do that going forward. I'd like to know your thoughts on.
Let me jump in here. Let me see if I understand the issue. You have an objection to funding it, and then it's sitting there, even though it's encumbered. Is there any way for you to fund it? You can keep it in your account. We don't have to have it in our account, or then you give us a half year, come back and amend and ask for more, but y'all don't work on a half-year budget cycle, and neither do we. So is there a way to bridge this with a solution so that you don't feel like you've spent it, but it's still sitting in the piggy bank?
So what I would say, there's a couple of things we're not touching on that need to be touched on when we're talking capital planning. The high level, taxpayers are going to see 13 million sitting in account. They're going to see a 19 million request and hear that there is a bond referendum that may potentially increase their tax rate, all within the span of 6 months. We've talked about that now. So that's the one part that is very shocking. So it's not that, I don't think anyone's opposed to the 19 million. I don't think anyone is opposed to the need is there. I think it is the optics of spending, because we have capital projects that we don't get done in 1 year. Capital projects are meant to roll. That is the nature of those funds. So I think it is acceptable and doable to sort of have it piecemeal that, okay, here's the 19 million ask, and that's what my team and I did, took the 19 million ask and placed it out over 3 years. So that we at least knew these are the projects, this is what's needed, here it is, and it's also at a pace that is doable and probably palatable when we're talking about a future bond referendum. I think if we have the, $550 million ask, putting that into a 20-year plan, a 10-year plan, and then that plan has to get updated every year. We do the same thing. We probably at the county have hundreds of millions of needs that, kind of like the culinary, we have a request that just keeps getting pushed back into year 6 of our 5-year plan. But it's something we'd like to do, but it's not something that, is needed when we have roofs that are caving in or anything. I don't want to make the county sound dire like that, but we have those needs that come up too that is doing it. So I think it has to be, if that $500,000 is that study, it has to be, okay, tell me when each of my roofs are going to fail. So I know in 2028, this elementary is failing, this elementary, this high school. We put it on the plan. Oh gosh, we just had a big storm. We had that in 2028. We now need to move that to 2027. This one can now move back. But it's like a constant evolving, I don't know what that game is that you like are moving the pieces each
Jenga?
one.
No.
Like Tetris, but it's like the wood one where you're constantly moving, trying to get
Whack-a-mole.
the red one out.
Yeah, different game, same concept.
Yes, yeah. I don't know what that's called, but like a capital plan is literally, that's the game, is we constantly have to do that. So I think we also just have, I think the education part is important, because just a taxpayer, I see 13 million, I hear 19 million, and now I got a bond referendum. I'm thinking, what are we doing, guys? But we know it's needed. We know it's something we're going to have to do. So to make sure we get the education out there, we do explain that, yes, this is a sticker shock, but it's the reality of capital and the way it works, because a lot of residents kind of conflate capital and operating, that they think it's the same, it's a one-year thing, and it's not. So the education part, but to really have that full 20-year plan that we can then break down, okay, this is our 5, this is what we publish to the public, but we know back here, this is also going on, and every year we can change it up, because it's a plan, it's going to change. Ours changes every year. I don't think you can go between budget books and match our capital plan each time, because everything changes and moves. So long-winded way to say that, yes, I think, having the ask and breaking it up is doable. It would be a budget amendment. Capital tends to be one-time money, so if we have one-time money in unrestricted fund balance, anything like that, that's typically where we would recommend from it, since it's not part of the budget. But we'd have to make sure it falls within the fiscal responsibilities and all of our guidelines and everything. But yeah, that's just sort of different viewpoints to give, that there's a lot on the horizon, and we have to make sure we're thinking not just the need today, but the horizon.
Well, I think what you're talking about really is what should have been done 50 years ago. Because I think for as many people that say that's a lot of money, there are people out there saying that's money that is late being spent already. That I know that there has been this said about New Hanover High School, that now all of a sudden it costs more to fix it when it's broken than it would have cost to repair it when it first started. So I think that that's a double-edged sword, but we certainly, and that's what that ask is to develop that long-term strategic thinking for you folks, and for us.
And what I'm thinking is, if I remember correctly, you've got about the 17th of June for your budget, is that right? Is that the drop the hammer day?
We recommend the budget.
Probably not. I think we're looking at the first meeting in June to have our public hearing, and quite possibly be followed up immediately, meaning that same meeting, with a vote on the budget. We have technically until June 30th. So there could always be a special meeting called, or if it doesn't pass in the first meeting in June, you would push to the second meeting in June, which I believe is the 17th, which is what you just referred to. I know that sounds complicated, but we're trying to get the budget passed as quickly as possible.
So what I was thinking, there was maybe we could, I don't know, it would mean we'd have another meeting of this body at the end of the month, but before your meeting, to where we could bring this year's capital request with the information you need to make up your mind about it.
Eric, have we shared our thoughts, or Amanda, with the school board at this point? Okay, you kind of see that, so there can certainly be internal conversations. I think large budgets, or ideas like this, the window to make changes is
Yes.
rapidly closing.
Yes.
And on our end, we're trying to come together for the united thought as, okay, here's our budget. We're really close to that now. So if there are going to be dramatic changes in the request, I suggest, in an hour, you bring them forward to Eric or Amanda or me or Stephanie, and
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting there would be dramatic changes. It was more of the explanations for the answers that you don't feel you have yet.
well, I think that they kind of got answered in our response as to what we've put in the budget already. And if there's major pushback in that, that's what I'm saying is, oh gosh, the $5.28 million, that's what we're suggesting with the capital plus the lottery money coming in. Did I get that right, 5.28? That we can't live with that. Tell us what you can't live with there. Concept being also spreading that capital request over multi-years, 3 years, Eric, is that right? Yeah, 3 years, to get to that $18.9 million. Recognizing, and frankly, I'll pull back the curtain here, some of the pushback that I had was, well, that just covers this year's request, the 19 million. What happens in those intervening years? And the unanimous response I got from our staff was, well, we'll factor that in as they come forward. At the bottom of this conversation, there's a trust issue that seems to dog every statement. and I keep going back to, show me where the county has never been there for our children and for this organization. I don't think you can ever point to that. If it is, I'm not aware. I know there's some nipping around the edges, but on the major issues, we are there. And, you know, we may have to reconfigure it, spread it out, et cetera. With that being said, if there are major changes to what you know we already are putting in the budget, please bring them forward pronto. And, you know, all ears, that's why you have 2 county commissioners here. There might be 5 here if we were allowed to do it. You have our attention. But also, as much as this room is universe as the schools, we actually have a bunch of other things that are out there that are pulling on us and, you know, needing money and attention as well. So I just bring that up, that's an obvious fact.
Yeah, and this is, the whole budget, this whole budget process this year was designed to restore confidence and trust. I'm fine with you saying, Barnes, this is what we can afford right now, as long as you understand, and my wife says I do best in small doses. That's fine. You will see me again. You will see us again, because the needs won't stop. If you leave the door open to come back and say, we finished, here's the receipts, ready for another round, and you folks are comfortable with that, I think we can live there, fine. That helps establish that trust, that helps establish that transparency, fine with that. But I just don't want to, that sole thing about trust being an issue.
Yeah.
Trust can't be an issue because we're gonna be clear, we're gonna be deliberate, we're gonna be very, very transparent. These needs won't go away.
Yeah.
So just know that, and I understand what you're saying, that we're not the only people who need things. But they're children, right?
Yeah.
Hard not to look at them first. But I think that's what this job is. That's what this job is advocating. So we want to be partners. We don't want this to be a hostile relationship ever again. So if you're telling us, I just want to make sure there's a distinction between what we need and what we can afford. Those are 2 different things. But I think that's logical. That's what life is. We have that issue in our own personal lives. So we can work with that. We just want to work collaboratively. As long as the door's open, I think that's what we're looking for. And I don't want to speak for the board, but I think that's what we're looking for.
And speaking as one member of the board, I do have like you know, if we came at you half year and asked for a budget amendment, you know, would all 5 of you vote the same way? So there's that fear that we're going to have to overcome. But let's take the first step, and because you're right, you've never said no. I mean, you've never left us high and dry. So, you know, but I would be remiss if I didn't say it's scary to have to ask you for budget money twice in the same year. It is. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Wilborn.
And I just want to, you know, I've been on capital since I started on the board many years ago. And I'm just a little concerned, because I think we're starting to see slow into the, you know, we're either going to be reactive or proactive. And I'd much rather be proactive. You know, New Hanover, what a perfect example of that. You know, put a little bit towards it each year, or we can wait and have a huge deficit like we have now. And I'm just a little concerned that we're going to get in the situation where, you know, number 7 is something we really, really got to do, but we don't have the money for it right now. So, I mean, I don't think we're coming to you guys with the, hey, we need everything. We all our wants, needs, and everything.
Pie in the sky.
We're at the needs. These, you know, most of these are, all of these are needs. They're not wants or, you know, I mean, you know, what example we had just a minute ago from, you know, at New Hanover. I mean, that's not even, I'll be honest, I don't think that's a need. That's to me a want. I think that's a need. You know, for the kids there, they need that lab, that culinary lab. But it's been put off and put off because we don't have the money. So, you know, and I'll be honest, 112 years ago, I taught at Trask. And, you know, some of the problems that Trask had then.
Looking good, looking
Pretty
good.
close to it, pretty close to it. But, you
Now,
know,
recently?
you look at things like the, you know, trying to get in and out of Trask in lanes right now. I mean, that's been a problem since I did teach there, you know, and it has, you know, but it's been one of those, we'll try to work on it, we'll do a little bit here, we'll put a Band-Aid on it here to try to, you know, so, yeah, at some point we need to come up and say, hey, how can we help you? Let's get it done. Let's get it done right so we don't have to, I mean, this plan's a great idea to try to look at it and have it spaced out, and so we could say, this we could do later, this we really, really need to do now. But, I think we are saying a lot of these things are, we really, really need to do these now.
Go, Amanda.
If I may, Mr. Wildebohr, piggyback on that, if you look at our capital requests for this year, for example, anything that's related to roofing, we have it placed on that list because we have, actually for our roofing, I'll brag about our roofing, we have a team that does annual evaluations, so we have a 5-8 year plan, 1 year, 2 year, all the way out of the high priority roofing needs, and it's based on warranty needs, et cetera, so it's very comprehensive. But some of the requests that we've placed on there, we know that if we can capture the funding for that and do the work, we will save ourselves the paying double in the future. So all of those on the list are we need it now kind of things, and roofing is a good example where we have strategically placed those specific roofing projects on there because we don't want to have to pay double in a couple of years, because we have an opportunity, for example, to recover a roof versus re-roofing it.
Right.
And you save a lot of money. So that's one example of how important these items are, where we are being proactive instead of reactive. But if it gets pushed too far, then we go into reactive mode, and then the next time we bring the budget, that recover project will be double the amount that it is.
Go ahead, Amanda.
I think all of that is true. I think just to set reality as well, and since it's in me, budget officer, I'm sorry. But
Sounds like Ashley.
but we could cover, we have in the budget that we are going to recommend $140 some million going forward. We are not covering things that the state should be covering. A lot more money to go to facilities and capital. So I think, yes, that is very much the reality. The more we put it off, the more expensive it gets. But are we willing to start having conversations that maybe SRO funding at $5 million gets transferred to capital? Are we willing to have the conversations that people are going to support a higher tax rate to support more facility funding for schools?
We're gonna talk about that in a minute.
I think all of this is true, but I think we have to be grounded in reality that the county's picking up a lot more than the statutory requirement, which makes it hard, because it's going to be easier to put a teacher in a classroom. We're going to feel better about it. That's what we want, to make sure our kids are supported, and that tends to take away from facilities. We tend to see that in the county too. We'll want to make sure that we have the people and the customer support a lot more than we'll want to make sure we're purchasing cars.
And you know that we support that model because we're going to Raleigh, we're addressing these things. In fact, our entire endowment request that we also requested of you folks was to provide evidence to prove that the allotment formulas are not in the right space.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that in just a second, but 2 points. Dr. Barnes has said, if we could get 8 kids back, would fund a teacher. So if you're at New Hanover, we have a lottery system, and we're going to have some complaints about the lottery system because kids want to go to a different school than they're assigned to. Are you going to choose New Hanover, which your district is for? They don't have a culinary lab. No, you're going to want to get into Laney, or I don't know who else has them. But it's a vicious, like we're the hamster on the little wheel. It's just a vicious cycle, and we've got to get ahead, because we know we need to attract students back, and they can't be sitting in a classroom where the air conditioner doesn't work to get them back. And so it's Mr. Wildebohr said, the proactive versus reactive is a really big part of it. And that's why of this group, Dr. Morgan went, Jared went, Hannah went, Kim went, Pete went, I went. We took 9 students, and we took, and Natalie, sorry, and John Hennett. And we took a woman who was drafted to drive the school bus that we rode in all the way to Raleigh, like 9 hours.
Someone didn't enjoy their bus experience.
I enjoyed everybody with me. It was, you know, it was a really slow thing to get there. But when the students sat and said, you know, the funding formula needs to be changed, it counts, but we didn't actually move the ball. They actually talked a little bit about the calendar. But when you put students in front of legislatures, it was a hugely awesome day. The kids learned so much. We learned so much from being with the kids. And it opened doors. We took the children, we took them onto the floor of the House of Representatives. We took them onto the floor of the Senate. We took them into, I think, 6 or 8 or 9 different legislative offices. And they met face to face, and they were at the table. We were against the back wall. And they spoke to the senator. They spoke to the representative. So but it's a slow, you know, it's a slow train. It really is. But we intend to do that again. I'd like to make it an annual trip. And our timing was just absolutely perfect. So we've got to get that hamster wheel moving faster than it is right now. So if we can trust you for a budget amendment, yeah, maybe that's what we do, you know, but we have to all be on the same page. So with the time that we've got left, we've got a couple more things to cover. Do we have any more questions for Dr. Morgan on this that we've just been doing? Yes, oh, sorry, I forgot you. You did have a question.
I would just like one comment. From the takeaway of this conversation I have, it sounds like to have the laundry list out so everybody is acknowledgeable of the $550 million will be helpful. And then we have categorized, and just being, I say we, capital committee, because this is, now we're merged into one, but the priority 1, 2, and 3 kind of prioritizes those needs, and capital has kind of took it, I look at my colleague over here, because it was him and I, to bring forth the board just the top priorities to the board, and that's what we consider to bring to our partners at the county commissioner. So I feel like moving forward, if that whole list was shown and seen, and then to show you guys how far down we'd be able to go down the list with whatever asked that we are able to bring to you or receive, you can see, in addition to adding this kind of timeline to the priorities, I'm talking to Dr. Martin here, but like priorities 1, 2, and 3, to see that of here's the start and completion fiscal year. Let's say that. Let's have that delineation of what it looks like. So that it's a long-term picture without all the detail for every single project, because $550 million, that would be a lot of work when we know we're not getting to that. But prioritizing the 1, 2, and 3 priority so you guys could see the turnaround time of when it would hit being allocated and how fast we'd be able to spend it. And my last thing before I move on is I'm going to put my colleague, Mr. Sutton, up for bids, but I invite you to come and see just the awesome progress that we've been able to do at New Hanover, and just relish in that with us, because it's an awesome thing that's happened, and it's with your support and with your commitment. So I would be happy to join you if we can, but come out there and see just the work that's been going on and just the impact it's going to have for these kids. So.
We're progressing. There's going to be a lot of change here in the next month. They kind of talked about that, and so you'll see some big differences on the outside. That scaffolding, I know, just looks tough out there, but it's happening. It's looking good on the inside and the outside.
Yeah.
We're doing a lot of good work. Thank you.
I look forward to the celebration when it's finished. All right, so we're going to move on to the endowment request, and I believe Ashley's going to do that with us. And we have a handout, don't we?
I think next is the.
Did I skip something?
Yeah, the billing program.
Yes.
I don't think we want to skip through that. And Dr. Morgan is going to help out with that too. This is a list. If you were on the committee in February, this is familiar. This is a list that we've shared before. I think we've shared with the county commissioners several times this list. It's not in any type of priority order. It's just the items that have been identified a year or maybe even longer than that ago. And I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Morgan.
Yeah, I would say anybody who's who has worked with the county for any length of time will recognize some things that have been on here for much longer than this. So, but to Amanda's point earlier, actually, I was thinking about the idea of, you know, you're constantly, thank you, you're constantly sort of reevaluating things. I liken this list and some of the other ones to, like, I-40. I grew up in Greensboro, and at some point in my life, I realized there is never a time in my life where I-40 doesn't have construction. And I think that is a great analogy. So I'm going to coin that analogy. But I think a lot of the things you'll see on here, as Ms. Sutton said, they're not in any particular ranking order. My understanding is this was presented back in February of this year, and so some of the dollar amounts are likely older than February and not necessarily current, but hopefully they're not extremely far off. But I think the idea was just to present sort of to the idea of the running list of things that we'd like to see. Some of these things have been on here since, I think it was 2021 facility needs assessment for the county. And I know some of them are even older. I look at River Lights because I know I can remember being in principals meetings talking about River Lights back in 2015. And so it's just, I think that's the nature of the beast. But you know, I think to the points that were made here today too, I will sort of echo Dr. Barnes's comment. I'll be really honest. If I present something to somebody and they say, well, can you give us more in this area? Can you give us more dates? We can do any of that. We'll keep working to make it better. We'll keep working to improve in that process along the way. So for what it's worth, to that end, this was the second part of the conversation that we had discussed prior to today. One was the status of current capital projects, and the other was looking at, you know, what would the recommended priorities be if we were moving forward with building projects, with a bond project. Take your pick.
It's the last page of that projects to consider. You've got the
I have a question.
text, and then you have the list of that infamous $581 million.
Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
I see, and I have seen since February, Isaac Bear Early College building on this list. Have we just given up that the General Assembly is no longer funding early college facilities on university campuses?
Yeah, it's a very complicated question. I think originally when I was on the board, you and I were on the ad hoc committee, and that was done away with, which I was kind of upset about because I don't think the conversation's over. You know, there's an agreement, and I don't know when it runs out. Maybe actually you or somebody here will know. We got the appropriations for the plans. You know, the plans were made. They're beautiful. We got to look at them. The UNCW said, here we have a space for the building, but it's just kind of stalled out. And we know that those trailers are about done. I mean, unless you want to plop some new trailers out there, which I disagree, I don't think we should, we have to figure this out because to your point, it's almost like, okay, UNCW will give you a space. Who builds it? Who pays for it? Is it state? Is it the county? And we have to work that out.
Well, the state has paid for every early college and every other university campus that has one. I don't think we should have it on our local funding list. I think that together the community just needs to convince the General Assembly to treat UNC Wilmington just like they have, and therefore, Hanover County Schools, just like they have every other university early college.
I think there's a willingness to do it. Like I said, before Dr. Azwani came, we had conversations with Dr. Sartorelli. He was like, oh, I know where we can put it. So I don't think that's the thing, that's the question. But reading the MOU, and I'd love to print out of that, because there was a timeline on here, this is when it expires. And I don't know if that MOU is expired yet or not, or you don't think so, Ashley?
It's not. I don't remember the date. We looked at it. Do you remember the date?
I don't remember the date. I want to say it's 2027, but that could be wrong.
June
But
of
we
2027.
But
We'll
we can
double check.
definitely get a copy of the MOU and share with the committee.
I would love to share with Nat if you want to, or anybody that wants to look at the plans for that building and where it is and where it's situated and how accessible it will be. I would love for more people to know about it because, like I said, the plans were appropriated in the state budget to have them done, and nothing else has been done yet. But it needs linking with each other and having the conversation. And I love what you just said because everybody's like, well, who pays for it next? You know what I mean? And it's almost like it just sits out there in the ether and nobody does anything. So hey, let's work on that together.
Let's put that on the agenda for the next meeting, and then maybe we end up with a little ad hoc that goes after that issue at the state level.
I'd love for Ms. Walker to join us, and maybe we can
Yeah.
bring all the parties together and have that conversation.
Yeah.
Like that.
I mean, it's a wonderful school. I think New Hanover County Schools should be very, very proud of that program
Yeah,
and
we are.
highlight it. It's a very worthy program and very successful, and I think it needs attention.
And
Poor
I think-
Mr. Valines, he needs it.
Well, and I didn't know, Commissioner Walker, that Isaac Bears should be on the state's list of funding. So let's put that on the agenda and let's flesh that out, give it some time, and maybe we end up with an ad hoc that goes after that change.
Yeah, definitely, let's get the ad hoc back together.
And I will say, I think one of the reasons that we've left it on there as well is because I think this discussion is important. And there's some other more granular parts of that discussion. For example, DPI says we can't build on ground that we don't have a deed to, free and clear.
Who owns the building?
So then-
The schools rent it, like there's.
Yes, so then part of the question is, okay, well, does UNCW, are they willing to build it if they have the money for it? Or will
Will
they
they
say
want a
no?
piece of it, and how will they want to manage
Yeah.
it?
Correct.
Because right now, the way the trailers out there are, I think the schools are responsible for everything inside, and everything outside is UNCW. Right. So it is super complicated, but it's not something we can't do.
Correct.
We can't ignore it any longer.
The trailers are done.
Yeah.
They've been in there for almost 20 years, in those trailers.
Barbara, you,
So I was just going to say, if there's does anybody have any other questions about what you've been presented? I'm happy to try and answer those, and if not.
Yeah, Mr. Morgan, I was looking at some of these numbers for especially the new schools, the elementary school replacements. You know, what year was these numbers put together? Because they strike me as very low from what I heard. And granted,
2020 numbers?
just looking at other areas that have put together new elementary schools and intermediate schools, but $43 million is a lot of money, but
I
the
understand.
numbers I'm hearing are 80 to 100.
I don't know, I can't tell you honestly that, I don't know that they're that high. I can't tell you what they would be. I don't know when these numbers were pulled. I know it was probably before the February meeting. But because this had been presented so recently, we didn't go back to try and update anything in terms of this chart, because it was 3 months ago. I can't tell, Ms. Lawrence, you look like you have some knowledge to share. Okay.
No,
Thank you.
You're welcome. So those are relatively recent numbers within the past year. We work closely with the contractors that do work with us, and they are gracious enough to provide information about the cost of construction statewide. And so we use those numbers to generate the cost for the estimate for the new elementary schools. So we feel that those are accurate numbers. And they were even sort of estimated during a real peak in material and labor costs, which have leveled out somewhat. So within the past couple of years that we've generated those numbers, and we think that they are still holding in today's market.
These are without property, obviously. The land costs are not built into this.
Correct.
And do they include the FF&E, the furnishings?
Yes, they do.
They do?
Yes, they do.
Oh, then that's great news. I would hold my breath to see if we could pull a brand new elementary school for 500 students at 43 million if we can. Yahoo!
And talking with our
43,950.
architectural teams, those numbers they're seeing those same numbers in Brunswick County and the Charlotte Mac area. So not only the contractors that we work with, but the architects that we work with, we kind of keep our finger on the pulse of what they're seeing statewide, and there has been a little bit of a leveling out in,
Yay.
now I want to put a gigantic asterisk on that called tariffs. Tariffs. We don't know, nobody has a crystal ball, but right now, those numbers are holding.
Thank you.
wow. Amanda?
Also, I don't know if everyone here uses my microphone working. Sorry.
Get her a mic.
Just
Thanks. So one thing is, this is like future way in advance, but as we start to message this, I would just be careful of constantly saying like a new elementary school to be built to replace the current school. We're going to need to really define with residents what is new and increasing our capacity and what is a replacement. Just because when you just look at this, you see a new 650 student elementary, a new 650, so does that mean we're going up by 1,300
Gotcha.
capacity? Or, so I think just making sure we really just differentiate
Capacity.
between new and replacement, so that people understand, okay, one's coming off, one to come on, or something new.
I
Very
think
minor.
it's a very good point,
good point.
Amanda. And I'll also say, I would be remiss to say, like, I have had anecdotally, and I don't know if this is true, people say that we have some schools in our district that are underutilized. Someone threw out the name Alderman that, you know, is not quite filled to capacity. And some of our, and I don't, look, I hate to bring up the word redistricting. I don't want to do that. I don't think it solves every problem that we have. But like when people come and tell you, oh, we have some schools that aren't full, that don't have all, you know, aren't full, I don't have an answer to that. And I think, to that other point, a school like River Lights, I know that there are certain areas of the county that are growing a lot faster. Porter's Neck, they got, what, 4 trailers now?
Hopefully,
and-
in his legislation,
Yeah.
we'll do the other two.
And River Lights as well, that whole area is like a whole Sumner town, you know? That is a new school, and I cannot remember if we talked about that replacing one of our older schools or not. Do we all know the answer to that? I don't know what the closest school is to that.
I think it was a combination of things
Right.
in the discussion. My understanding originally, either it or Williams, Leanne, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the two was going to be a K2, the other was going to be renovated as a
Okay.
3-5,
Okay.
to help alleviate the capacity, the overcrowding at some of the other elementary schools in the center of the county.
And that was Williams, you said?
Yes.
Yeah, it says River Lights, right, River Lights, a new 650 student elementary, and Williams, a new 650. To your point, like, they're leveling each other out? Are they both gonna have 650 students in it, or, I mean, that's a good point. And I don't know if there's an appetite on this board to do a little bit of mini redistricting, because we know, like I said, Porter's Neck is crammed full, and and they have not finished developing up there, I'm sure of it. That whole northern part of the county is getting ready to get developed eventually. And that's a question too. So I almost feel like we should really evaluate that part of it. And I haven't even brought up the bond discussion, because what gets funded? What is the highest? Like the top 4 on here, River Lights, Pine Valley, like when I got on the school, River Lights, Pine Valley, and Williams, those 3 I've seen plans for. I feel like there was a motion to do that, like movement to do those, and they just never funded. It kind of just went away. It kind of just went away.
It was COVID.
Well, yeah, and that was COVID. And then there's
They're not gone completely.
No, I don't mean they disappeared, but like I just feel like it's just, I say that word a lot, I don't know why. It's just out there still. But we have to really have a realistic look at our current schools, what the enrollment is and where it's growing and where maybe we need to adjust some things. Just throwing that out there. I know it's not really a fun thing to talk about, but we are talking about building new things as well. And I've had conversations in a weird way about the birth rate getting lower, and I'm thinking to myself, so we're still moving here. I don't understand the whole math thing. I mean, I'm not a math genius, so maybe that's part of it. But you know, I always say every budget season, what are the needs? What are the needs and where are the needs? So maybe Dr. Varn, I'm going to talk to Matt and you can talk.
Sure. So a couple of things. One, there has been a bubble of students that have been sort of traversing through New Hanover County schools, through the high school. The last several years, we have graduated around 2,000. Don't hold me to that number, but that's in the ballpark. We graduate 2,000 kids and we bring in 1,700 to 1,800 in kindergarten. So what you have is a constant low-level bleeding of our overall population. Now, there are 2 groups of students, and this has been a conversation I've had with the board and, of course, with our senior staff about how do we stop that trickle every year. And there's a couple of things that are specific in that. One is there is a group of parents that we never get. Kids who don't enroll in kindergarten have other choices and go on their way. There's also a specific thing that happens in middle school. Middle school is a challenging time for everyone, including parents, having.
Yeah.
Right.
Feel bad
Right.
when I went.
I'll let you have that one. But my point is that those two trickles are where we really see a lot of that. Part of our responsibility as a school system, and what we've talked about, is how are we being good stewards of the money that we are given? I will tell you that one way to do that is to begin to make inroads to bringing students back to the best option in the city, which is public schools. Because I also have an onus of responsibility to the county commission, to the county, to say, we're doing the right things with the money that you're giving us. We can't just come with our hand out and say, we need this, if we're not also actively working to bring kids to our school system. And I have to reflect back on something that Ms. Bradford said about how it's a lot easier to get them back when we put them in a classroom with air conditioning. Be that as it may, how do we, I don't want to say repair our image, but how do we promote the amazing things that happen every day? Because that's what brings parents back. That's what brings students back. So we're not just looking for funding from you. We're also looking at how do we begin to eat into those 7,000 kids who live in the New Hanover County limits that don't go to school with us. Where are they? How do we get them back? So in regards to converting and building things like this, there has to be a conversation about how we maximize the money that we're doing. That is reviewing of different programs, reviewing the sizes of buildings, things like that. Now, you do have pockets of places where enrollment is different than others. You have the northern end of the county, which is exploding in growth. You also have things down on the south side with like Bellamy and Anderson, okay? I was looking at Philip. Laney High School, there is a crowding issue there. We can't do all these things at once. But I think whenever you see us build a new building, you're going to see two things. One, they're going to be preschool compatible, because that's going to increase our flexibility. And two, we're going to build them for size. We're going to build them for the kids we're going to get in 10 years, not the ones we have right now. Because you do know we opened Porter's Neck and we're full, right? So how do we build for that expansion? I will tell you that one of the ways that you draw people back to the county schools is things like this. So does that answer your question? I don't know if I did or not.
Did you just say 7,000 students don't go to the school district?
Ashley, is that number correct? If you break it across private, charter, or homeschooling.
Right. So that, okay, well, that's good. That's crazy to me. 7,000 students on top of the students, like 24,500 that the public schools serve?
We serve just over 25.
Just over 25, okay.
Yeah, including
I'm
pre-K.
looking at all these different numbers. Like, I feel like I get different numbers all the
Wait,
time.
it's pre-K
Includes
versus
pre-K.
Okay, thank you. So I think we had a budget meeting, gosh, a couple of weeks ago, and I swear someone said that there were 2,000 more students. Does anybody remember that? It was like 26,000, like.
That's charter schools.
Right.
That 2,000 number is our charter schools.
Well, to Dr. Barnes.
Right.
Because we pass through the money to them. They're
Okay, so what was
considered-
told to me was this is all the other students, and I thought it included private as well. I would love to get a really good take on 7,000, because that blows my, and there's 7,000 more students out there.
And I think we gave that data out here, but I'll make sure you get a copy of it as well. But you also have to look at, guys, if you add up all the homeschool
Yeah.
and people taking school online, I think the virtual school, last time I checked, was the third largest district. If you put all the kids who go to virtual public schools outside the county into one group, it's the third largest district in the state. You have a lot of kids, and quite frankly, who left during COVID and just never came back.
Well, and that is another follow-up question to what I've been hearing, is that the birth rate's going down, and it's almost like you can't plan for everything. You know, I'm going to use a garden metaphor, because usually when I plant a tree, I'm thinking about it 10 years from now, right? When I see the growth in our area, I feel like it's not just going to be retirees. I feel like, you know, we talked about growing workforce here. Like, we have, that would help with the housing cost, and, you know, the housing problem that we have as well. If we can grow people and get jobs here. But, like, I feel like we're going to keep growing, and I feel like families will be part of that solution, you know, part of that equation, I mean. And I don't know, I keep hearing about the birth rate thing, and it doesn't make sense to me. And to your point, we got to bring them back in, but we also have to have a place to put them. And they have to be in places that they want to be, and that has to be a good option. I know.
Which brings us back
What is
to
it?
this, you know, I mean,
Okay.
but I think that there are most districts in the state have either slowed down their enrollment or are decreasing in enrollment. And that's not a new Hanover County specific issue, that is a statewide issue.
It's not just statewide. It is a fact that the birth rate is going down in the United States. It's a fact. Demographers, it's not a mathematician issue, Commissioner, it's a demographer issue. So I'm not a demographer, but I've read that our birth rate's going down, and it's not, the idea that we attract families will help our housing. It won't. It won't. And so a lot of those families with children will continue to choose the counties around us, specifically Brunswick and Pender, and so they're not coming to New Hanover County schools, right? Because housing is less expensive outside for workforce age people with young children. So there is an impact, and we do have to pay attention to it. It's a hard one to guess from my perspective, but Musin Katabi can guess it all day long because he's in those numbers. So, yeah, sure.
And just to speak to the schools that are on the list, so Pine Valley has the same structure as what Blair had, and Blair has already been, a new structure has happened. The funding just hasn't come to replace that other school that had the same floor model. And then Williams has the same floor model as the old College Park, which has been replaced. So that's, two of our southern schools haven't been rebuilt, that two of our northern ones have, that had the similar age and floor plan and maybe some facility needs. And then River Light speaks to, you know, the construction and everything in that area. And we've already spoken to the needs of Isaac Bear, certainly. And then our friends over at Trask, such a crowded area over there in the Laney area, right? And then we.
The beauty of that building is that it was recently renovated 5 years ago. So thankfully, I don't have a lot of the facility issues other places have. That building is beautiful. They did a fantastic job. But yes, the crowding, but we do it, we make it.
And then our friends at New Hanover. So that's sort of a little history on why those schools are on there for those who might not have been around for a while.
And it is a beautiful
I'm sorry?
school. So I want to go back to the trash discussion because you read the description, it talks about potentially making it the 9th grade center for Laney, which may help with the traffic issues, I think.
It could. I will also add that there have been lots of meetings with the Department of Transportation. This hasn't been talked about and not dedicated. There have been, for the last 3 years with Mr. Little, and prior to that with Ms. Ducharme, we have been meeting with the county and the Department of Transportation. So there have been a lot of improvements from the Department of Transportation and New Hanover County Schools. There have been a lot of improvements to help and fix that. I understand it's still very overcrowded. But I do believe that the Band-Aids that were referenced earlier that were put in there have helped a lot with it. I mean, the parking lot is empty by 4 o'clock, which you're talking 3,000 people on one campus. I understand there's kids who leave, but it is empty by 4 o'clock every day. So.
Well, I didn't mean to just highlight the traffic issue.
Okay.
I was a parent of 2 that went to Laney and it was
Okay,
a nightmare.
committee
I'm just going to go ahead and say it. But the whole idea that the growth is going to happen, so, I mean, Laney being overcrowded, that was supposed to be a solution for that, and potentially build another middle school. Maybe we call it Trask, I'm not sure. But that's, I don't know if that's a discussion for the bond. I mean, the bond discussion has to happen soon, and I don't
It
know.
does, and we wanted to hit that a little bit, and we're pretty much on our time, so I would be very interested in the motion if everyone could extend for 15 more minutes. I'm very mindful of your schedules today. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, I'll motion to extend for 15 minutes.
Yeah, I'll second, yeah.
Okay, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, let's come to that, but we have 2 other really important things on our agenda. So the next one is just a discussion of the endowment request that we have, and
we have 2 friends here with us today that's going to help us. Julie and Robin, if you would like to come up, maybe, yeah, Leanne, you can share Leanne's seat and where she was sitting and the seat next to her, just so you have a mic. So what we've provided to the committee is just a copy of what was also provided to the endowment, just for informational purposes. Of course, we completed a letter of interest, which is, you know, just basic information about New Hanover County Schools, but we also attached this PowerPoint presentation that talks about or shares with the endowment, you know, what our plan is for that funding if it is received. And this is talking about the 42 school specialist positions that we've talked about before with this committee. And so, Dr. Barnes, I don't know if you want to start with the formulas, but with the presentation, if we can bring that up. The first slide is to address why are we making this request to the endowment? And, you know, the reason behind it is because the state funding isn't providing all of the support service positions that we need. And Dr. Barnes, I'll let you add whatever you'd like to on that
I don't need
slide.
to burden this poor group again with my feelings about the allotment formulas. Just to let you know that every single school has lost support as we have gone through the years. The cost of insurance, the cost of benefits, the cost of retirement, these things add up. We cannot continue to put the burden of numerous different jobs on teachers if we're also going to hold them accountable for instruction. So, that being said, if you want to go through this again, I'll talk about this anytime you want. So just come find me and I will go through it again.
The next slide is just sharing with you guys the different areas, and I believe we've talked about this as well, but just to bring back to the group, you know, the plan was to be able to provide one specialist per school in the targeted area where the principal and their school improvement team decides, you know, these are the critical areas at our school. This is where we see we need the most extra support, and let the principals make that decision because they know the needs of their kids, and each school is going to be different. And so they'll be able to look at the area of academic remediation, academic extension, behavioral support, graduation rate, and exceptional children's program as well. And as you may remember, these were the areas that came out through the budget process, through the budget listening tour, the highlights. These were areas where the employees, community felt we were understaffed and that the teachers really needed that additional support. And so if you'll go to the next slide, and I'm going to turn it over to Julie if that's okay to talk through this process.
Yes, so we decided to incorporate a consistent approach, a problem-solving approach that we are using in the district now. We're piloting it this year, and we are hoping to move full steam ahead with safe and civil schools work in the next school year. And part of that work is their evidence-based problem-solving model for instructional solutions. And part of that is grounded in positive school climate and culture leads to increased school connectedness, which leads to high academic achievement. And we wanted to make sure that we use that evidence-based model to approach the solution, the future-focused solutions for this work. Let me keep going?
Yes.
Okay, and so, yes, next slide, yes. The school specialist priority positions at each school, of course, schools would decide that based on their own school data. We don't need to make a district level decision because each school is going to operate differently and they're identifying their school improvement targets and focus areas differently. So how to solve it? The problem solving model or framework is STOIC. So you structure, you teach, you observe, you interact, and then you correct fluently and positively. So that would help us develop that scope of work. And of course, like Dr. Barnes said, and I think it's been reiterated multiple times, and Ashley's reiterated this is to allow us to collect very specific data to report back to state decision makers on the creation of and the updating of the allotment formula. And when we create a specific problem-solving model from an evidence-based framework, we're able to utilize our partners at UNC Wilmington to evaluate, to create an evaluation design and to manage the progress monitoring of this evaluation, so that then we have something provided to us that can inform state decisions. I think I already said that, the STOIC problem-solving framework moves, oh, I need to say next slide. Robin's doing that for me. Next slide. So this is a reiteration. This is all about facilitating change, because we work in the human business, and we are looking at changing the level of engagement among our students, which means that we address how we as the adults operate within the building. So therefore, STOIC is our model that we want to use. I didn't realize I was presenting, but I'm happy to be here.
We're so glad you're here.
Walk in, hand me the paper.
You got this.
So we have created over the next 5 slides, you don't have to click through them yet, but over the next 5 slides, we have created the STOIC framework for each of those 5 areas that we want to provide to schools for to address their specific needs based on their school improvement. So if they choose academic remediation, this slide works for them, how they would structure, teach, observe, interact, and correct. And again, this is a framework. This isn't in the minutia of details that would need to be utilized to address the specific student need, but this is the overall framework that would be used for the evaluation, design, and progress monitoring. I don't think we want to talk through each of these.
So I just wanted to share with the committee for each of those areas a slide that would show the framework for those different areas. But we weren't going to go through all of that detail. But certainly, if you want us to bring this back and have more in-depth conversations, we can certainly do that at a later time.
Yep, and this yellow slide that moves beyond the STOIC ones is the overview of the program design that we would want used for the evaluation component, so that we can report a very comprehensive, data-driven response to our state decision makers on allotment.
And then you've already talked about working with UNCW, so that's on page 13, slide 13, to be able to help us evaluate the progress that we make with these additional positions. And Dr. Barnes, I don't know if you have anything else you would like to add to that?
No, we just appreciate, with the endowment, with the commissioners, we appreciate the opportunity to bring forth the things that we need. I know that the questions come up about, well, 2 years from now, who's going to pay for this? We understand, one, that this is a pilot, that the job of a pilot is to try something, ensure that it works, and then refine it. This is a way for us to help address questions and concerns from our legislators in the state level about what schools actually need. We will tell you that there are more than one, let's just say a lot, of unfunded mandates that end up in the state board regulations or general statutes that are not funded by the state. This is one of those areas. I think you need to predicate the endowment request. I know that we talked about with the county as well. You have to predicate it on 2 different questions. One, are our schools staffed adequately for the needs of our students? I'm going to tell you, as sort of the expert in the situation, the answer to that question is no. The second question is, will we survive if we don't have these positions? Well, yeah, we're going to survive regardless, but is survival what we want for our students? Is status quo what our kids deserve? And that's what kind of has led us to this space. Not because we want to ask for something more, we want to ask for something that we can then use that data to leverage the conversation where it needs to go. Thank you.
Question?
This is our $4 million ask to support 42 school positions for a period of 2 years in the spot.
Right.
And we're looking to the endowment, but behind the endowment, we're looking to clear the plus 2 or 3 others.
And I will say in public unequivocally that will not turn into a county level ask. If the endowment, we need it for 2 years. I will not ask for it past that, but this is what the school needs right now.
what would be helpful is to put that in writing. Frankly, I understand and
That
hear
won't come
you.
with my handout in 2 years?
Yeah.
Or what? I mean,
Oh, that, that this will not roll down to the county. In 2 years, coming forward saying, wow, sorry, but we really need, $2 million a year to continue this wonderful program. So I know that's some of the pushback essentially we're getting from some of our commissioners about this program. They just see it as, okay, we know where this is headed. This is a delayed ask to the county for another $2 million per year, or $4 million per year.
Couple of responses to that. One is, if this isn't funded by the endowment, I don't want to put that in writing, because I do think I would come back to you and say, this did not get funded by the endowment, and it's still a need.
Yes, I was
The
assuming
other
that it
response
did,
I'll
yeah.
say to that is, I don't make it a point to put things in writing that I've already said publicly.
Okay.
My word is good enough in that regard. So I'm telling you that this will not turn into a county ask, except unless I don't get it from the endowment, and then I think it's going to come back as a county ask. Does that make sense?
Yes, but that gets interpreted as, the county's the fallback plan. So initially and in the future.
Well, I'll say what I've told you before, that the argument about the money that needs to be paid for the water to put the fire out at my house doesn't put the fire out at my house. I can't move the state. We have tried all spring. I can't move the federal government, and we don't even know what the federal government funding is going to look like. I know that I can look you in the face and you care about our kids, and you care about our kids, and you guys care about our kids. I can't apologize for the fact that I'm going to push for what our kids need. I get it, but these are not things that are not emergent, critical needs that we have. Because I also have to look at Ms. Lennon in the face, and Mr. Sutton in the face, and Ms. Moon in the face, and Ms. Clark in the face, when I don't have the staffing they need to help kids in their schools.
And Commissioner Zappel, with all due respect, you want us to trust me that if we could come to you in 6 months with a budget amendment, he's told you on live stream that he won't come back and ask. So the trust works for you.
Yes, it does. I'm looking for a path forward to get this done.
Support, right.
Yeah. Another thought I had, and Julie, maybe this is a question to you, and I'm looking at the STOIC thing, the acronym, and what goes into it. It reads to me as very similar to the Leader in Me program that we saw out at Porter's Neck. Is there a connection?
Sorry, I'll share. It's not the same materials and product, but it is a similar option. So Leader in Me, and I'm not an expert on Leader in Me. Leader in Me is very much a school focus. Safe and Civil Schools is a body of instructional research and evidence base for student engagement, addressing chronic absenteeism, addressing appropriate behaviors, responding to behavior needs. And so it's more encompassing, and it's based on more school psychology research and the movement of academic achievement through the root causes. So it's a very multi-layered approach that supports classroom management, parent engagement, all sorts of things that are not just about leadership skills for students. And I didn't mean to minimize Leader in Me as just leadership skills for students, but this is more encompassing for whole school improvement in a comprehensive manner.
Thank you.
And it also forces schools to really examine their practices, their culture, their students, to make the right decision.
Now, you put on our agenda the initial budget resolution. Ms. Bradford, can I just button that up? I'm sorry. I just want to button this up because I know you have an ask. And I know you're trying very hard
Half a minute.
to get to the endowment folks. This is a very good way to do that by showing that there are going to be outcomes that will be proven. And I just wanted to say that out loud because, obviously I have I'm on both sides of this now, and I do understand the needs, and I try to convey that. But I think that the endowment going forward is going to be appreciative of knowing that that is what you're going to show them.
Would it help if I told you that that's a copy of what we already sent to the endowment? Thank you.
And we are going to move on to this last, and we've gone over it as a board, but Commissioner Zappel and Commissioner Walker, you know, if you have any questions, Eric, if you have any questions, Amanda, on this, I think now would be a good time. And Ashley's going to walk you through just a couple of quick things on this.
So sure, so this is the beginning budget resolution that was approved by our board that we are going to be putting in place here shortly. Across the top, this is probably a different format than you're used to seeing as far as resolutions, so just to go through that really quickly. Across the top, you see each of our funds, so we have 6 funds that we use to ensure money designated for specific purposes or used for those purposes appropriately. And so we've got state public school funds, so these are funds that we receive directly from NCDPI that are state funds. The second column, local current expense. These funds come from the counties as an operational appropriation, and also fines and forfeitures is included there. Federal grant fund or funds also received directly from DPI funding. Other restricted revenue fund or funds that are received for grants that we put in that fund to track those separately. We also have some indirect cost revenue that goes there, and so we've talked about that before in this committee. Indirect costs would be when New Hanover County Schools is administering grants, and we're able to charge for the administration of those federal grants or private grants that we receive. Then we have capital outlay fund. Funding there comes from the county as a capital appropriation and also from lottery. And then we have our enterprise fund, which is our child nutrition, is what's included in that fund. And then as you go over to the left-hand side, you have regular instruction, special populations. That first group of instructional services, that's our direct interaction between staff and students. So that grouping that you see there, and broken down even to, you know, I guess drilling down a little bit, under that area you've got regular instruction, like I said, special populations, alternative programs. And then the next group is system-wide support services, the support services for staff and students. And so I know in the past we've gotten conversation, or we've had questions about, I don't know what's included in regular instruction versus what's included in support and development. So that's why we've also included the purpose codes for you, so you can look. So for example, on page 1, if you were curious what does regular instructional services mean, then you can see that's the cost of activities that provide students in grades K-12 with learning experiences to prepare them for activities as workers, citizens, and family members. And that's the first sentence, but that's how you could use this document to go back and forth between the resolution to understand what those expenses are. I'm not going to go through each of those, but you can certainly go through those yourself to get those definitions and be able to see the different areas of funding for the different purposes of the budget. On page 2, we continue to go down on the left-hand side. We show child nutrition services. We do get some state funding there and a little bit of federal funding, along with the enterprise fund that we talked about before. Of course, capital outlay is also listed there on the left-hand side, along with payments to other governments and indirect costs. And so the majority of that row is going to be charter schools that you see under local current expense. That $7 million number is what our payments to charter schools.
So payments to other governments, that's 7.7454, that's
Yes,
charter?
that's charter schools.
That's good to know.
And then the section 2 underneath, you see, we talked about that a little bit, the revenue sources for the different funds I talked about a little bit earlier. It's important to note, I know the county staff over here is seeing that New Hanover County number, and that's a lot larger than was in the PowerPoint slide. So that difference is, remember, for us, these are all estimates. So we built this budget based on our request to the county, which included the 42 school specialist positions. So that's why that number's about $4 million higher, because we do have those specialists included here. And just like with state and federal, we don't have those budgets, that revenue that we're going to actually receive yet. So once we know for sure what the county is going to provide, state, federal, we will come back to our board and adjust our budget accordingly. This is just our estimate based on our request and what we know at this point as far as planning numbers for federal and state funding from DPI.
Questions? I have one
One quick
question, please.
question.
Could you just cover how much of this budget is for paying staff? Because I think it's like 83%. 83%. I just wanted to say that out.
Benefits and salaries.
Okay.
Yeah, which would also include the local supplement, just for clarification.
And Ms. Sutton, would you also clarify with paying staff, I know Dr. Barnes has spoken to it, so I just wanted to be, is it staff that are inside the schools or in our central office staff?
Last year, we reduced 53 people from our central office. So we are now at what I would call the subsistence level, at both the school level and the central office level. Less than 10% of our overall staffing is tied to the central office. And as well, we've committed that any funding we receive, in addition to where we go, goes to schools, not to the central office.
Ashley, what is the?
He's
Oh, I'm
first.
sorry. Oh, no, Eric, you got a point, you go first.
After you.
Maybe you have the same question. What is the ADM number that you're using?
So we are using 509 as the projected number. So when we're estimating for state and federal, our DPI funding,
Yeah.
it doesn't include charter schools or preschool, pre-K in that number.
No charter, no preschool.
In that number, right.
And in your financial numbers you have here, is pre-K considered at all in any of these columns?
Yes, so pre-K for us is included in that other restricted revenue fund. So while it's not considered for estimating state and federal funding, it is included in other restricted because we receive grants for preschool. So we receive NC Pre-K, which is a grant, and then also the funding we receive from the county, we look to as a grant, so it's included in that column. And so if you look at the bottom on page 2 under revenue sources, you can see New Hanover County, we've got the $2 million there for that's the pre-K grant that comes from the county. There's that $2 million number.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there a repairs and maintenance budget? And if so, is it paid out of operating or is it paid out of capital?
We have repairs, maintenance has a budget that they use for repairs. Is that?
I think that, I'm trying to get an idea as to.
Yeah, so it's, so maintenance would be included in 65, page 2, that first row, operational support, 65 there. But remember, for us, operations is also transportation, it's other things, it's not just maintenance.
Thank you.
Yeah, trying to dig into this, Ashley. Boy,
Yes.
I'm really
Yes, sir.
impressed. You're pulling this right out of your head on all this. And I'm always impressed with you. The total for New Hanover County, $107 million on page 2 under the local current expense fund.
Yes.
Maybe you said it and I just missed it. There is no charter money in that number?
Charter schools are included in that number.
In that number?
Yes.
But they are not included in the ADM number?
Right. When I was referring to included in the ADM number, I was referring to when I calculate the estimate of money I'll get from state and federal, I don't include charter schools, because charter schools, they directly get money from DPI, state and federal money from DPI. I do include it in that local current expense column, which is where I get county funding from, because you guys give their money to me, and then I write them a check. DPI gives the money directly to them. That's the way we look at it differently.
It's the money that flows through you.
Correct.
You can understand why we get confused.
Oh, yeah, yes, I understand. I get confused too.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Anything else? We wanted to have some general discussion on going forward. And I feel like we're kind of behind the ball on this bond discussion, so that's going to have to be the focus of our next meeting. But they've been bannering around some figures, and I just wanted to know what's the maximum ask for a bond if it was going to be in '26. What's the maximum ask? Is it enough to cover what we need, or do we need to actually consider the following year?
That's a debt ceiling question, isn't it?
It is a debt capacity question. We do have a policy in place. The constraining factor is $2,200 per citizen. If you do the math on 240,000 citizens, that comes out to in the $530 million range. We currently have debt outstanding of around $430 million, 430 to 440. So we've got about $100 million of stated debt capacity. Our policy, we are talking to external advisors to see if there's any kind of wiggle room. That 2,200 that was devised years ago in consultation with the bond rating agencies to make sure we remain AAA rated. So going above that debt capacity threatens potentially the AAA, but we are nonetheless asking questions to ensure we're at a proper level. The other part is if in the bond referendum, if it can again be scheduled, we're paying off principal every year around $45 million. So if we say we're going to issue X number of million and we're going to do it immediately, that gives you one answer. And if you say we're going to stagger it over a 5 to 7 year period, then every year you're paying down principal, which theoretically you can take into account when you come to that debt capacity number. So state, yes.
Yeah, keep going on your thought.
I was going to say, so stated right now, our debt capacity is around $100 million. The next few years, our debt, looking at our CIP plan and looking at the debt on that, we're paying down more. We should be paying down more than we should be issuing, and that should be in the $25 to $30 million range. So naturally, I would expect the $100 million to go to about $130 million by the end of next fiscal year, just using the existing debt capacity that we've got. Then every year thereafter, again, we pay down about $45 million of principal, and depending on how much debt we issue, that would cut into that pay down amount.
I don't know the answer to this question. Can you, if we petition a bond, can you petition over a certain number of years? I mean, can we do it that way?
I think you lay out the plan as part of the referendum. You would lay out
Right.
your plan. So
Because like we said before, there's a difference between having all the money at once. There is a level of, like a saturation point where we can't do much more than that at a time, right? So if, I think this is a question for another time, right? But if there was a way to petition for a bond that structures it over 10 years, what, you want me to do 20?
no, 10's fine.
Okay, that face was, I didn't know what that, I
No,
was reading
but
that face.
the headline number is going to be the total dollar amount. That amount is the amount that would sort of be front and center,
Right.
but then you would explain in the
Yeah.
detail that we're going to, not going to issue it all at one time.
How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Yeah,
So
I
I
think,
wonder-
Dr. Barnes, I think that is how many counties, Charlotte, Mecklenburg, Guilford County, when they've been, and Wake County, when they've been passing these really large school bonds, they are planning to not issue them all at once.
Right.
And so I do think that's possible. And we have a lot of work to do to help the public understand all of these things that I'm gaining a much better understanding
Correct.
of, so that they support our ask of the county commission
Oh,
and the staff
100%.
to put that sort of debt towards our school facilities.
It's the difference between renting, paying off a car versus buying a car all at once.
And it's a really good point. If you just look at that list we have of things, there's just no way you can do that in 5 years. It's a long-range thing. So my thought was this next meeting, we really shift, other than one thing we've already identified, we shift and have mostly possible. What's the possibility of a bond, and what year would it be in? And, because that's kind of where we need to be.
Yeah, we have to talk about timeline and what
Yeah,
deadlines are.
Timeline has to be there.
And Eric's talked about 100 million, which is far less than what is actually needed.
Well, you did actually mention it could go up to 130 depending on your
Yeah,
things that you listed.
well, even if you did that, I mean,
I know 30 million doesn't go very far these days.
and perhaps in the discussion, we can talk about other discussions we can have for potential funding. I think on our last trip, we talked about public-private partnerships. I think we have to look outside of just the county in a referendum, and we should. That should be part of the discussion.
And we
Hopefully
had
Ann
some,
will be there to help us with it.
we had some discussion of private-public, a very first meeting back in October. I don't
Right.
think you were here for that. So
No,
this-
but we got to have a
We
serious
got our
discussion
feet
about
wet
it.
on that concept.
Because time is of the essence, I think.
Yeah.
As far as a referendum is concerned, and how much and for how long, I mean, that's all important.
Yeah,
But
I'm a
other
little nervous that
potential.
we could pull it off this year.
But just the amount of available workforce in the county to do the projects is a thing too.
True. So with that said, go ahead.
So I don't want to overstep, but I just want to make sure that this committee is aware. So this committee, we combined 3 committees to this committee. So the bond committee was also combined into this. So based on that, my understanding would be, and please, board, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the group that would determine the priorities of this list, which would then go to our board for consideration. So I think that that's one of the next things we need to have on our list is conversations, more in-depth conversation about the items so that this committee can determine what the order is. So then we have the list and Eric can help us, county staff can help us figure out how far down we can go on the list. So that's just food for thought for maybe the next meeting.
Yeah. And with that said, can we look and see when we could have the next meeting? Things get dicey in the school district between now and summer in terms of being able to schedule anything.
If you could please not schedule it before the final graduation of the school year.
Which is when?
June 7th.
Yep.
7?
Yes,
And
ma'am.
they-
That's the first time I've talked today. Hey, everybody.
That's a
June 7th.
Saturday, June 7th. So the second week of June, is there availability? Because this is going to be a really important meeting. I need everybody to be here. And we tend to meet on Thursdays. Is that still a good day?
Not
That's your-
on the 12th,
Pardon me?
not on June 12th.
Okay.
That's the last principal meeting, and it's a celebration. It's in this building.
That
And
got
that has
canceled.
been moved to June 20th.
Yeah.
Oh, has it? Okay. It hasn't been changed on the calendar.
So June 12th is now in play. Any other date?
All
do the
the
5th.
county has is a commission meeting at 4, but I think as long as we keep it at 12:30, I think it should be fine.
Yeah.
Is that okay with Eric and Amanda? I mean, you should ask you as well.
Yeah, you guys.
Well,
That
with
work
it,
okay?
yeah, with it being budget and year-end season, I don't know your availability.
She's like,
I mean, it's, yeah, June is crazy.
June is
Yeah.
tricky. And Ms. Barnhart has some June dates she can't meet, but, and by the way, we found out that the school district has moved from Google to Outlook, and the email between you and the invitations has kind of got funky. Thank you, Natalie. And some people, are you okay on the 12th of June? Okay. Boss said yes. So you may not be able to respond and receive. We got to figure out another way to talk to you about these meetings. And we might just start calling you personally the week out and say, hey, are you coming or you're not coming? To remind you, because right now Outlook and Google are fighting with each other in our district, and we're losing. But ultimately, we'll end up with Outlook completely.
Yes, sir.
we're helping people learn a system that has some user error in it as a person who's using the system, myself included, sorry.
But some people don't even get it to implement until way later, so it's confusing. Yes, sir.
I was just going to mention, at the October meeting, I brought forth a timeline on a proposed bond. I was just going to perhaps remind you of a couple of the initial dates.
Okay.
October 31st was listed as the project scope being determined, and then a 3-month period to determine the cost of that scope. So October 31st, again, determine the scope. January 31st, have the estimated cost finalized were the kind of the first 2 steps in that.
And we can bring that back, to the next meeting as well, that same document that we've already shared.
That's like 4 months from our next meeting. Yeah, we're gonna have to just focus. We're gonna start, hone in on it. I thought we were gonna get a little further on it today, but we're gonna have to hone in. And really, we ought to be able to call it on or call it off in terms of, do we wanna go forward, do we not? So we're gonna have everything we need to make up our mind. Can we do it in this time frame that we have, or what happens if we don't?
That's the time frame,
Yeah.
right? So that's what we have to work with. That's just the fact of it, so. If you're talking about putting it on a ballot or a referendum on a ballot, that's their rules, so.
Yeah.
Not,
It's a pretty involved process. So
Yes.
that timeline, there's not a lot of fluff in there, so that's pretty much what it needs to be.
From today, so it's 4
From-
months from our next meeting, yeah.
Okay.
So, we're gonna cover just 2 things next meeting and hit it hard. And so with that said, if there's nothing else, a motion to adjourn? And I will second that, so we're adjourned.